The Xunzi, Burton Watson Translation. Section 22. Rectifying names. This is the way the true kings of later times fixed the names of things. In the case of the legal terms, they followed the practices of the Han Dynasty. In the case of terms pertaining to ranks and titles, they followed the Zhou practice. And for names of ceremonies and ceremonial objects, they followed ritual practice. For the common names applied to all the various things of creation, they followed the established customs of China, and made certain that such names could be used in distant regions whose customs are different, so that a common means of communication could be established thereby. These are the common names that apply to a man. That which is as it is from the time of birth is called the nature of man. That which is harmonious from birth, which is capable of perceiving through the senses and of responding to stimulus spontaneously and without effort, is also called the nature. The likes and dislikes and angers, griefs and joys of the nature are called emotions. When the emotions are aroused and the mind makes a choice among them, this is called thought. When the mind conceives a thought and the body puts it into action, this is called conscious activity. When the thoughts have accumulated sufficiently, the body is well trained, and then the action is carried to completion. This is also called conscious activity. When one acts from considerations of profit, it is called business. When one acts from considerations of duty, it is called moral conduct. The faculty which allows man to have understanding is called knowledge. Understanding which has practical applicability is also called knowledge. The understanding which makes man capable of something is called ability. Capability which has practical application is also called ability. Injuries to the nature are called sickness. Unexpected occurrences which one meets with are called fate. These are the common names that apply to man, the names that have been fixed by the kings of later times. When the king sets about regulating names, if the names and the realities to which they apply are made fixed and clear, so that he can carry out the way and communicate his intentions to others, then he may guide the people with circumspection and unify them. Hence, to split words and recklessly make up new names, throwing the names that have already been established into confusion, leading the people into doubt and delusion, and causing men to argue and contend with each other, is a terrible evil, and should be punished in the same way that one punishes those who tamper with tallies or weights and measures. If so, then the people will not dare to think up pretexts for using strange words and throwing the established names into disorder, but will become simple and honest. When the people are simple and honest, they are easy to employ, and when they're easy to employ, then much can be accomplished. Again, because people do not dare to think up pretexts for using strange words and throwing the established names into disorder, they will be of one mind in obeying the law, and will be careful to follow orders, and if they are like that, the ruler's accomplishments will be long-lasting. When the ruler's accomplishments are long-lasting, and his undertakings are brought to completion, this is the height of good government. All of this is the result of being careful to see that men stick to the names which have been agreed upon. Nowadays, however, the sages and true kings have all passed away. Men are careless in abiding by established names, strange words coming to use, names and realities become confused, and the distinction between right and wrong has become unclear. Even the officials who guard the laws or the scholars who recite the classics have all become confused. If a true king were to appear now, he would surely set about reviving the old names and creating new ones as they were needed. To do so, he would have to carefully examine to see why names are needed, how to go about distinguishing between things that are the same and those that are different, and what essential standards should be used in regulating names. If there are no fixed names, but men begin to discriminate the different forms of things on the basis of their own particular observations, each applying his own names and interpreting the different phenomena in his own fashion, then the relationships between names and realities will become obscured and entangled. The distinction between eminent and humble will become unclear, and men will no longer discriminate properly between things that are the same and those that are different. In such a case, there will be a real danger that the ruler's intentions will not be properly communicated and understood, and his undertakings will undoubtedly be plagued with difficulty and failure. For this reason, the wise man is careful to set up the proper distinctions and to regulate names so that they will apply correctly to the realities they designate. In this way he makes clear the distinction between eminent and humble, and discriminates properly between things that are the same and those that are different. If this is done, there will be no danger that the ruler's intentions will be improperly communicated and understood, and his undertakings will suffer no difficulties or failure. This is the reason why correct names are needed. And how does one go about distinguishing between things that are the same and those that are different? One relies upon the senses. Things which are of the same species and form will be apprehended by the senses as being all the same thing. Therefore, after comparing such things with other things of a similar nature, one may settle upon a common designation. In this way, one arrives at a common name for all the things of one class, which everyone agrees to use when the occasion demands. Differences in shape, colour, or marking are distinguished by the eye. Different tones of timbre, pitch, or modulation are distinguished by the ear. Sweetness, bitterness, saltiness, blandness, sharpness and sourness, and other variations in flavour are distinguished by the mouth. The perfumes of incense and flowery fragrance, rankness, rancidness, and putridness, and other variations of odour are distinguished by the nose. Pain, itchiness, cold, heat, smoothness, roughness, and lightness, and heaviness are distinguished by the body. Speech, events, delight, anger, grief, joy, love, hate, and desire are distinguished by the mind. In addition, the mind possesses an overall understanding. Because of this overall understanding, it may rely upon the data of the ear and understand sounds correctly, or rely upon the data of the eye and understand forms correctly. But the overall understanding must always wait until it has received new data from the senses and matched it with the data already recorded in the mind concerning a particular class of objects, before it can arrive at a correct understanding of the object. If a man simply allows his senses to record data, but does not attempt to understand what they have recorded, or if he reaches an overall understanding of the phenomenon, but cannot put it into words, then everyone will call him an ignorant man. The above explains the way in which one goes about distinguishing between things that are the same and those that are different. When this has been done, then one may begin assigning names accordingly. Things that are the same should have the same name. Those that are different should have different names. Where a single name is sufficient to express the meaning, a single name should be used. Where a single name is not sufficient to express the meaning, a compound name should be used. Where there is no conflict between the single name and the compound name, they may be used interchangeably to refer to the same thing as occasion demands. Although they are used interchangeably, there is no harm done. Because one understands that different realities must have different names, one sees to it that they are given different names. There must be no confusion about this, any more than about the necessity to see it, that all things which are the same in reality have the same name. The myriad beings of creation are countless, and yet at times we wish to refer to all of them in general, and so we call them things. Things is the broadest general term. One starts with a limited general term and keeps moving on to broader and broader general terms until one can go no further. And there one stops. At other times we wish to refer to particular categories of things, and so we use words like bird or beast. These are broad particular terms. One starts with the broadest possible term, and moves on to terms whose meaning is more and more circumscribed, until one can go no further, and there one stops. Names have no intrinsic appropriateness. One agrees to a certain name and issues an order to that effect. And if the agreement is abided by and becomes a matter of custom, then the name may be said to be appropriate. But if people do not abide by the agreement, then the name ceases to be appropriate. Names have no intrinsic reality. One agrees to use a certain name and issue in order that it shall be applied to a certain reality. And if the agreement is abided by and becomes a matter of custom, then it may be said to be a real name. There are, however, names which are intrinsically good, names which are clear, simple, and not at odds with the thing they designate, may be said to be good names. There are things which share the same form but occupy different places, and things which have different forms but occupy the same place. One must be careful to distinguish between them. Things which share the same form but occupy different places may be referred to by the same name, though they are actually two different realities. There are things which change their form, and although they are still the same thing in reality, appear to become something different. These are called transformed things. Although they change form, they are not distinguished anew because they are actually the same reality. This is how one should go about examining realities and assigning designations. These are the essential standards to be used in regulating names. One must be careful to examine the way in which the kings of later times fixed the names of things. It is no shame to suffer insult. Quote, the sage has no love for himself. Quote, when you kill a thief, you do not kill a man. Quote, men who make statements like these are deluded in their use of words and bring to confusion to names. If one examines into the reasons why names are needed and determines which names are appropriate, he can put a stop to the statements, mountains and chasms are on the same level. Quote, it is the emotional nature of man to have few desires. Quote, a feast of grass-fed and grain-fed animals adds nothing to the delight of the palate. The music of the great bell adds nothing to one's joy. Quote, men who make such statements like these are deluded in their understanding of realities and bring confusion to names. If one examines them in the light of what I have said about how to differentiate between same and different, and determines which names fit the situation, then he can put a stop to such statements. Quote, deny and make a visit. Quote, the pillar has an ox. Quote, a white horse is not a white horse. Quote, men who make such statements like these are deluded in their use of words and bring confusion to realities. If one examines them in the light of the agreed usage of names, accepts those which fit in with the agreed usage, and rejects those that depart from it, he can put a stop to such statements. All the pernicious theories and inane sayings which men wilfully concoct, and which depart from the proper way, can be classified under these three types of delusion. The enlightened ruler understands these classifications and does not argue with men who make such statements. It is easy to unify the people by means of the way, though one cannot expect them to share in the process of direction. Therefore the enlightened ruler controls them with power, guides them with the way, encourages their advancements with commands, brings enlightenment to them through the teaching of ethical relations, and prohibits evil through punishments. Hence his people are converted to the way as though by supernatural power. What need has he of persuasive thinking? But now the sages and true kings have passed away, and the world is in confusion. Evil doctrines arise, and the gentleman has no power to control the people with, and no punishments to prohibit them from evil. Therefore he must have recourse to persuasive speaking. Names are used when the reality itself is not clearly understood. Combinations of names are used when single names alone are not understood. Explanations are used when combinations of names alone are not understood. Discourses are used when simple explanations alone are not understood. Hence names, combinations of names, explanations and discourses are the major forms to be used in conducting practical affairs and are the basis of the king's business. When one, on hearing the names, can immediately understand the realities they refer to, then the names are fulfilling their practical function. When they are combined to create pleasing forms, then they are fulfilling their aesthetic function. He who can use names in such a way that they are both practical and aesthetically pleasing may be said to have a real understanding of them. Names are the means by which one attempts to distinguish different realities. Phrases consist of combinations of names for different realities, put together so as to express a single meaning. Discourses and explanations are the means by which, without allowing names to become separated from realities, one makes men understand the principles of correct action. Names and combinations of names are the instruments of discourse and explanation. Discourse and explanation are the means by which the mind gives form to the way. The mind is the supervisor of the way, and the way is the foundation of good government. The mind should be in accord with the way, explanations in accord with the mind, and phrases in accord with explanations. The correct names should be formed into combinations. Understanding should be based on the true circumstances. Differences should be carefully distinguished without error. And analogies should be drawn which are not forced or false. When one listens to the words of others, one should bring them into accord with the proper forms. When one discourses on one's own ideas, one should give a complete explanation of one's reasons. If one employs the correct way in order to distinguish what is false, just as one stretches a line to distinguish between crooked and straight, then pernicious theories will be powerless to cause confusion, and the doctrines of the 100 schools will have nowhere to hide. The sage has the understanding that comes from listening to many things, but does not let pride show in his face. He has the kind of generosity that embraces many men, but does not let it appear that he boasts of his virtue. When his doctrines are practiced, the world is upright. When they are not, he strives to make clear the way, but hides his person. These are the characteristics of the sage's discourse. This is what the Odes means when it says, quote, gracious and splendid, like a jade sceptre and jade baton, of good fame and good aspect. The joyous gentleman is regulator of the four quarters. The gentleman and man of breeding observes the proper degree of courtesy and obeys the rules of seniority. No improper words leaves his mouth. No evil sayings come from his mouth. With a benevolent mind, he explains his ideas to others. With the mind of learning, he listens to their words, and with a fair mind, he makes his judgments. He is not moved by the censure or praise of the mob. He does not try to bewitch the ears and eyes of his observers. He does not cringe before the power and authority of eminent men. He does not feign and delight in the words of rulers' favourites. He does not feign delight in the words of the ruler's favourites. Therefore he can abide in the way, and not be of two minds, can endure hardship without betraying his ideals, and can enjoy good fortune without overstepping the bounds of good conduct. He honours what is fair and upright, and despises meanness and wrangling. Such is the discourse of the gentleman and the man of breeding. This is what the Odes means when it says, the long night passes slowly. Long thoughts beset me. If I am not false to antiquity, nor to the principles of ritual, why fear what men say? The words of the gentleman are far-ranging and detailed, apt and to the point, varied and yet unified. He employs the correct names and chooses suitable phrases in order to ensure that his meaning is clear. His words and phrases act as the messengers of his meaning. He makes certain that they are sufficient to communicate his thoughts, and there he stops, for to try to force them to do more would be evil. If the names one uses are sufficient to indicate the realities one has in mind, and the phrases are sufficient to lay open the heart of the matter, then one need go no further. Anything beyond this becomes laboured. The gentleman rejects laboured discourse, but the fool seizes upon it and makes it his treasure. Hence the fool's words are hastily chosen, and sketchy, contentious, and wide of the mark, voluble and full of ferment. He is led astray by names, confused in his use of phrases, and there is no depth to his meaning. He struggles to advance, but never reaches the heart of the matter. He expands great labour, but achieves no result. He is greedy for reputation, but wins none. The words of a wise man are easy to understand and easy to practice. Abide by them, and you can easily make a place for yourself. Carry them out, and you will surely be able to obtain what you desire, and avoid what you hate. The words of a fool are just the opposite. This is what the Odes means when it says, were you a ghost or demon? No one could see you, but you have a face and eyes, wherein men spy your dishonesty. So I have made this good song, to expose to the full your evilness. All those who maintain that desires must be gotten rid of before there can be orderly government fail to consider whether desires can be guided, but merely deplore the fact that they exist at all. All those who maintain that desires must be lessened before there can be orderly government fail to consider whether desires can be controlled, but merely deplore the fact that they are so numerous. Beings that possess desires and those that do not belong to two different categories, the categories of the living and the dead. But the possession or non-possession of desires has nothing to do with good government or bad. Beings which have many desires and those which have few belong to two different categories. But that is a matter of the emotional nature of a being, and has nothing to do with good nature, good government, or bad. When one has a desire, he does not wait to make certain whether he can satisfy it, but immediately sets about trying to do so as best he can. The desire itself, which arises before one knows whether or not it can be satisfied, comes from the nature received at birth, while the search to satisfy it as best as one can is directed by the mind. Thus, a single desire which has sprung from the inborn nature may be directed and controlled in many different ways by the mind, until it becomes difficult to identify it with the original desire. There is nothing a man desires more than life, and nothing he hates more than death. And yet he may turn his back on life and choose death. Not because he desires death and does not desire life, but he cannot see his clear way to live, but only to die. Therefore, although a man's desires are excessive, his actions need not be so, because the mind will stop them short. If the dictates of the mind are in accord with just principles, then although desires are manifold, what harm will this be to good government? Conversely, even though there is a deficiency of desire, one's actions can still come up to the proper standard, because the mind directs them. But if the dictates of the mind violate just principles, then although the desires are few, the result will be far worse than merely bad government. Therefore, good or bad government depends upon the dictates of the mind, not upon the desires of the emotional nature. If you do not seek the cause of good or bad government where it exists, but only where it does not exist, though you may proclaim that you have found it, you will be wrong. The basic nature of man is what he receives from heaven. The emotions are the substance of the nature, and the desires are the responses of his emotions. It is impossible for the emotions not to believe that their desires can be satisfied, and to refrain from seeking to satisfy them. But when they have decided that their desires can be satisfied, it must then be a function of the intellect to guide the search for satisfaction. Even a lowly gatekeeper cannot keep from having desires, for they are the inseparable attributes of the basic nature. On the other hand, even the Son of Heaven cannot completely satisfy all of his desires. But although one cannot completely satisfy all of his desires, he can come close to satisfying them. And although one cannot do away with all desires, he can control the search for dissatisfaction. That is to say, one cannot completely satisfy all his desires, but by seeking to do so, he can come close to satisfying them. Conversely, one cannot do away with all desires, and there will always be longings left unsatisfied. But the intellect can make an attempt to control the search for satisfaction. The way, in its positive aspect, can lead one close to the satisfaction of all desires, and in its negative aspect can search to control the search for satisfaction. It can serve to control the search for satisfaction. In this respect, there is nothing in the world to compare to it. All men will abide by what they think is good, and reject what they think is bad. It is inconceivable, therefore, that any man could understand that there is nothing in the world to compare to the way, and yet not abide to it. Let us suppose, for example, that here is a man who desires to go south, regardless of the difficulties, and hates the thought of going north, no matter how easy it might be. Just because he may not be able to go as far south as he would like, is he likely to abandon the idea entirely and turn north instead? So men have certain things they desire, regardless of the difficulties involved, and certain things they hate, no matter how easily gotten. Simply because they cannot completely satisfy all their desires, it is likely that they will abandon the way which leads us to the satisfaction of their desires, and instead accept what they hate. Hence, if men approve of the way and abide by it, how is it possible to lead them astray and produce a state of disorder? And if they do not approve the way and depart from it, how is it possible to improve them and produce a state of order? Therefore, the wise man discourses on the way and nothing else, and the aims of petty men with their strange theories sink into obscurity. When men acquire something, they never get only what they desire and nothing more. When men reject something, they never rid themselves only of what they hate and nothing more. Therefore, when men act, it must be on the basis of some scale and standard. If a balance is not properly justified, then heavy objects will go up in the air and men will suppose they are light, and light objects will sink down, so men suppose they are heavy. Hence men become deluded as to the true weight of objects. Similarly, if men's standards are not correct, then misfortune may come in the guise of what they desire, and they will take it for good fortune, or good fortune may come in the guise of what they hate, and they will mistake it for misfortune. In this way men become deluded so as to the proper nature of good and bad fortune. The way is the proper standard for past and present. He who departs from the way and makes arbitrary choices on the basis of his own judgment does not understand wherein fortune and misfortune lie. If a man exchanges one object for another that is the same, then everyone will agree that he has gained nothing nor lost anything. If he exchanges one object for two that are the same, then everyone will say that he has lost nothing, but in fact has made a gain. But if he exchanges two objects for one, then everyone will agree that he has not gained but lost. Anyone who calculates can see that the gain lies with the greater number of objects, and anyone who stops to think about it will choose the way that leads to the best results. No man will exchange two objects for one, because he knows well enough how to count. But to act in accordance with the way is in fact like exchanging one object for two. How could it be a loss? To depart from the way and make arbitrary choices on the basis of one's own judgment, however, is like exchanging two objects for one. How could it possibly be a gain? Any man who would actually exchange that which can gratify the desires of countless years for that which brings only a single moment of gratification simply does not know how to do arithmetic. But let us try delving deeper into the hidden aspects of the matter, those that are difficult to perceive. No man who derides true principles in his mind can fail to be led astray by undue attention to external objects. No one who pays undue attention to external objects can fail to feel anxiety in his mind. No man whose behavior departs from true principles can fail to be endangered by external forces. No man who is endangered by external forces can fail to feel terror in his mind. If the mind is full of anxiety and terror, then though the mouth may be crammed with delicious food, it will not recognize the flavor. Though the ear listens to the music of bells and drums, it will not recognize the sound. Though the eye lights upon embroidered patterns, it will not recognize their form. And though the body is clothed in warm, light garments and rests upon fine woven mats, it will feel no ease. In such a case, a man may be confronted by all the loveliest things in the world, and yet be unable to feel any gratification. Even if he should feel a moment's gratification, he could never completely shake off his anxieties and fears. Hence, although he confronts all the loveliest things in the world, he is overwhelmed with worry. And though he enjoys all the benefits in the world, he knows only loss. What can a man like this hope for? Can he hope to gain possessions? Can he hope to nourish his health? Can he hope to prolong his life? He says he wants to satisfy his desires, and yet he sets out to do so by giving free license to his emotions. He says he wants to nourish his health, and yet he does things that endanger his body. He says he wants to increase his joy, and yet he inflicts his mind. He says he wants to win fame, and yet he allows his behavior to become reckless. Such a man might be infofed as a lord and hailed as a ruler, but in fact he would be no different from an outlaw. He might ride an elegant carriage and wear the cap of a high official, but he would still be no different from a needy peasant. This is what is called allowing the self to become the slave of things. But if the mind is calm and at ease, then even beauties that are less than mediocre will gratify the eye. Even sounds that are less than mediocre gratify the ear. A meal of vegetable soup or boiled greens will gratify the mouth. Robes of coarse cloth, shoes of coarse hemp will give ease to the body. Robes, a narrow room with rush blinds, a straw carpet, and a table and mat will give comfort to the form. Hence, one may not be able to enjoy all the most beautiful things in the world, and yet he can still increase his joy. He may not find a place among the famous and powerful, and yet he can still win fame. A man like this, if placed in the position of a ruler, will do much for the world as a whole, and give little thought to his private pleasures. This is what it means to value the self and make other things work for you. Words that have a shallow basis, conduct that does not bear examining, schemes of ill repute, the gentleman is careful how he approaches these.